Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 11 of the Pixar Post Podcast. I'm TJ.
And I'm Julie.
And welcome back after our quite lengthy delay of basically through the month of April.
Yeah.
We're very sorry about the delay, but we have some fantastic news for you guys. We were out to Pixar twice, as you may have seen on our site if you're a reader and not just a listener to the podcast, but we were out to Pixar twice. So we're going to talk about in this episode the trip where Julie and I both were able to attend Pixar at the end of April with our custom Partysaurus Rex toy. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about the press event that you just went to.
Yeah, in early April.
And we're going to play lots of great audio from that. And in fact, we're going to break this down in that series that you went to for the press event into 3 podcasts. The first one is going to be broken down kind of by looking at the monster world and some of the larger discussions. And the next 2 podcasts, we're going to dig into a little bit more of the story and character development. And then finally, we're going to wrap it up with some technical elements and then talk with producer Corey Ray and some Blue Umbrella discussion.
Yeah, there was just so much information. It's hard to cram it into one podcast. I mean, hours and hours of audio from the event. It was amazing.
Yeah, so obviously first thing we wanted to talk about was that delay a little bit more there. So in addition to the 2 trips out to California, and for people that may not know, we live in Michigan, so that's a lengthy trip. We had a vacation out there, so we spent some time, and then like I said, Julie was out there for the press event. But we want to apologize for that. We also had some family matters that we had to attend to, so we hope you understand, and we do apologize for the delay of being away. We do want to continue to stay on the weekly schedule.
Yeah, we're back on track.
And we'll be able to anticipate that we're going to do that. And then we also ran into some issues with how much audio, as Julie was already talking about. We wanted to make sure that we had the time to edit it and clean it up so that way it was really right for the podcast and take out some of those moments where there was big delays and gaps. We didn't want to just throw a whole bunch of hurry and throw that out there.
Yeah.
But either way, so let's get right into it. Let's talk about the first trip that we took in April, or that Julie took in April, to go to the Monsters University press event. So first...
And that was on April 9th and 10th. And I did a 2-day write-up on our website, which you guys probably already read and looked over. But to hear it, actually, I think from my perspective, to hear my voice and the excitement, it's hard to write that sometimes. So we definitely wanted to kind of, discuss it.
Well, and plus we've got all that audio from the interviews and everything. Yeah. That'll make it, much different there. So talk about the fact that, we were obviously lucky that we were invited to the event, but talk about once you got the invite, the whirlwind of it, the flight, the hotel, the first time into Pixar. So talk about that whirlwind of getting kicked off.
Yeah, well, we were ecstatic when we, got the invite and were invited out. It was for one of us, and obviously Pixar Post is a 2-man show. TJ and I both run it, and only one of us could go.
There was a lot of discussions and coin flippings and talks.
Yeah, and the great thing is I wanted TJ to go, and he wanted me to go. So we both wanted each other to go. So it wasn't like someone was really upset that they couldn't go. But TJ and I decided that since the Pixar Post was ultimately my idea, that I would go this time, and should we ever be invited back out, he would go the next time. So basically, on the 9th, I flew out to San Francisco, and that began my whirlwind adventure. It was a little over 4-hour flight. We were picked up by a shuttle service, taken to the hotel where we checked in for registration. I had about 45 minutes to an hour of downtime, kind of just to compose myself before we were shuttled back to the studios, or to the studios for the first time. So I took that 45 minutes and just kind of composed myself. I walked around the hotel room for a little bit, and then I walked around just the hotel for a little bit, meeting some of the other film bloggers that were there with us. I was on a film blogger day. I think there was about 25 of us total. So after that lag time there, we all walked down to the bus, And that's where it started to sink in. Oh my goodness, I'm going to Pixar for the first time. And it was just kind of surreal. And not only that, but I was in California for the first time. I mean, TJ's been to California quite a bit for business, but it was my first time going to California, and San Francisco was beyond beautiful. Our hotel was actually in downtown San Francisco, and I think everyone there, I think it's mandatory that you have to own and ride a bike in the city, because everyone was riding bikes. I've never seen so many bikers.
Yeah.
And I mean, we live in Detroit and it's nothing but SUVs. So
Right.
it was quite the difference to see that. But
so you get on the shuttle.
yeah, we get on the shuttle, and I'm sitting next to a couple random people and kind of talking about where they're from, where I'm from. So the bus ride takes about 30-40 minutes to get there. And the bus ride there is beautiful. We go over the, Bay Bridge, and you see all this beautiful, just like, it's surreal.
Yeah, California scenery that you don't get in flat Michigan. You get hills and mountains and all these other kind of
it was
crazy
really
things.
gorgeous. So we pull up to Pixar. Now, we're in a very large bus. We did not go through the Pixar gates that have been ever photographed by everyone. It was actually around the side, kind of the back area. So they pulled us in there, and the whole bus is like, you could hear, everyone was talking. When we pulled into Pixar, there was like this hush. Everyone was like peering out the windows and like, oh my gosh. I think some people were more excited than others, and some people, this is their actual job, where, TJ and I actually have real jobs, and this is more of like our hobby and what we would love to do as a job. So I was really excited just to see, how everyone reacted. So we get in, the bus stops, we get off the bus, and everyone's taking pictures of the Monsters University archway, which was, we took tons of pictures, but to see it in person, and I know TJ, you saw it when we went back in late April, it's unbelievably detailed.
It's really cool. It's a very, you can tell it has like a harder structure to it, but then the outside of it is like a really thick, coarse foam kind of material that they've painted and made it look like stone.
It looks heavy.
And then it absolutely looks like it's like real cement, but it wasn't.
Yeah, and there's vines on it.
They had the vines, and they had the archway going across. That was actually metal.
Yeah.
But it was really, really, really cool and very grand. And it's really...
It was... the photos, I hope it looks large in the photos. It's massive. It was a massive structure. So after taking a few photos, all of us hurried down towards Luxo and Luxo Jr. And this being my first time in the studios, I was actually surprised that Luxo and Luxo Jr. The ball.
Yep.
And Luxo Jr. aren't that far of a walk from the parking lot to like that.
Right. It seems like it's so deep within the campus, but it literally is like parking lot, and you're there.
Yeah, it wasn't that far of a walk.
Yep.
So, we take a ton of pictures there, and then we see a lot of the booths that were going to be for our next day, which was the grand event. So you see, like, the scare games. There's like 6 booths. There was, like, the Greek squad. And
the art table, all that. Yeah, so it's like what they talk about, hey, join the improv club and all that in the previews.
Exactly.
So
just
they had
like
that set up, but you'll get to more of those details. Yeah. So you guys went into the actual atrium of Pixar. And
we went into the actual atrium, and most of the bloggers and writers were already inside, and I stood right there on the hardwood floor just looking, and that is when the moment hit me, like, oh my goodness, I'm standing where greatness comes every day. Every person of Pixar, every single job. I just think it was incredible for me. It was like a moment that gave me chills. It was like, how am I here? How am I lucky enough to be here?
Right.
It was very surreal for me. But we were hurried. We were hurried along. I had to get in line and take our photo for our Monsters University IDs that we were given the next day. And from there, we were basically rushed into the Pixar Theater.
Okay, so talk about the theater. What's it like walking in? How big is it? Talk about like the grandness of it.
Yeah, the theater is beautiful. Right before I went into the theater, I actually met up with the 3 other Pixar blogs that were there. It was Pixar Podcast, Pixar Talk, and Pixar Times. They were all wonderful guys that I met. So they kind of gave me, and the 3 of them had been to Pixar before, so they told me what to look at in the theater. They're like, be sure to look at the ceiling. And I'm like, okay, I'll be sure to look at the ceiling. And I'm glad I did, because once you're inside the theater, it's large, but it's not massive. And the seats are very cozy. It's very, elegant, just like you would see as the atrium. It's very, it's very Pixar. So the first we see the Blue Umbrella, which TJ and I were lucky enough to see.
Right, we had already seen it. We had already screened it, interviewed Sashka.
Yeah. So Sashka and Mark Greenberg talked a little bit, gave a little bit of background before we watched the short. And that's when the lights dimmed. I looked at the ceiling, and it lit up like a night sky. There were shooting stars, but that wasn't my favorite part. My favorite part was the surround sound in the theater sounded like crickets, like a hot summer day.
Now, is it like they really crank up the crickets so that way it's like really loud, or do they make it really subtle? It's
not super loud, but it's not super quiet. To me, it was like a perfect
summer night.
Yeah.
Like what you hear outside.
But I don't know. Yeah. I was like, what?
One more layer to get you totally immersed into like that nighttime movie experience.
Exactly. It's funny because I looked around the room and most everyone's still staring at the sky, or the ceiling. And I'm just looking around being like, I'm loving the surround sound. I'm loving this. This is great. So then we watched the short, which is just as beautiful. And everyone loved it. Everyone applauded. Everyone was like, I don't want to give anything away, but the realism of this short. So everyone be super excited to see this short. It's beautiful. And then we were lucky enough to have Corey Ray and Dan Scanlon come up and give a little background to Monsters University, where we saw the first 40 minutes or 36,
whatever.
37 minutes, I think it ended up being. And the beginning of Monsters University, I mean, the whole thing, TJ and I were lucky enough to see an early screening. We've seen the whole thing now. But the beginning of the movie, I mean, I can't say anything. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but it is wonderful.
It's hilarious.
It's hilarious. There's so much heart in it. And when the 37 minutes came up, and the screen went black and the lights went on, there was a like, what? Throughout the whole audience. We thought, maybe they'll show us the whole thing, or it can't end here. No.
Right.
It ended at a really good part where it all piqued our interest, and it was incredible.
Yeah. So the movie ends. We'll obviously hear more about the movie throughout the audio that we're going to get in the interviews and other sessions and classes that you attended.
Right.
So the evening ends and you get ushered into.
We had a Blue Umbrella themed reception in the Brooklyn building.
Now, what is the Brooklyn building?
The Brooklyn building is the newest building. I think it's about 1.5 years old. It sits basically kind of across and next to, it's the only other main building on the Pixar campus. It's basically where, I guess that's where John Lasseter's office is.
It's all the bigwigs.
It's all the big guys.
It's Lee Unkrich, it's Pete Docter.
There's a lot of technical teams that are over there.
Right.
It is basically, don't film anything. Don't take pictures in here.
Right, it's a very highly secretive building, and that's because...
basically, it's the Steve Jobs building, or the main building, as it's both called. A lot of the offices are decorated crazy and fun. The Brooklyn building, that hasn't happened quite yet.
Right, it's still so new. It's very new, yeah,
and clean.
But they want to keep it secretive because that's where they're working on.
That's where they're working on new productions. I mean, that's where the Inside Out is going on. That's where probably Finding Dory is kind of taking place.
Right.
It's
really early stuff. It's not even working on The Good Dinosaur or something like that, which is coming out.
It might be stuff that's on a whiteboard that we don't even know yet.
Exactly. So that's why there's no pictures, nothing that you can do there at all.
Nothing. But it is a beautiful building, and we were lucky enough to be in like the atrium area, where we were able to talk with Sashka. We could talk to Mark Greenberg. We could talk to Corey Ray. We could talk to Dan Scanlon. They were all there to talk to us. And obviously a group of 20, 25 film bloggers, that's not a lot. I mean,
right, you definitely had some opportunities to go up and talk to them and ask them questions.
Right, and a lot of the, film bloggers were, kind of just, we were all kind of talking to each other and stuff. So, I branched out. I wanted to, talk to kind of everybody.
Of course.
And I was lucky enough. I talked to Sashka, Mark Greenberg, and I had a lengthy conversation with Dan Scanlon, which was amazing.
Don't talk about it yet.
I won't talk about it yet, but it was incredible.
So, yeah, it was pretty cool. So, so the reception, it ends.
It ends.
And
it ended around like 8:30, and we went back to the hotel.
Right. So then, next morning, what time do you get up?
Oh, gosh. Crack of dawn.
Okay.
I think the bus left at probably 8 a.m.
All right.
8:30?
So you're at Pixar right at the beginning of the day, basically.
Yes.
So when you're walking in, we've posted the video of this already, but it starts playing drums.
Yes.
They have a marching band.
The Monsters University marching band was there to greet us. And myself and another blogger stayed back while everyone else ushered forward to the, Monsters University tables. And we were able to get some great footage. And really, I feel like that's when we, just soaked in the moment.
Yeah.
There was only two of us, and then the Monsters University, drum line. And to know what was about to come for the day was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
The day before was cool because we saw the movie and stuff, but now this is like a full day.
Right. So you're going into school, essentially.
Yeah.
So they take
and this is an actual work day that's happening for all the other films. I mean, all the other Pixar employees are there. This wasn't like a day off and only for
right.
Monsters. I mean,
right. It's still
I saw
ongoing.
Other animators that were there for the non-Monsters University event.
Sure.
So to me, that was cool.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you go through the registration tables. Now, they were just showing some products that they're going to be selling.
Yeah, they gave us some information for the day, just kind of what we should expect, our class schedule.
Right, they set it up like it was like an orientation.
We had our lanyards with our IDs, which kind of differentiated our groups that we were going to be in. Our groups are really small, 5-6 people.
Okay,
so
very cool.
It was wonderful.
Get you a lot of one-on-one time.
Definitely. And each roundtable conversation, we could each ask at least 2 or 3 questions.
Right. So once you get inside, what's the first thing you do?
Well, the first thing we did, they gave us like a breakfast, but a couple of us went right to the studio store. It was morning and it was time to shop.
Yeah, oh yeah.
The studio store is it's a charming store. It's not too big, but it's not super small. It's charming, and it's full of amazing merchandise.
Well, it's like basically, I mean, they have some things you can get elsewhere, but it's everything that you have basically ever seen online or that you could have not even imagined.
Yeah.
So you end up going on like this buying rampage, but you did it in stages.
I did. I think I went into the store 4 times throughout the whole day. The store closed at 4, so I kept having to go back, being like, oh, let me just check it one more time to make sure I got everything I wanted. And of course, since TJ wasn't there, I overcompensated him, and I think bought the store for him.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. We got a lot of great stuff. And then probably one of the cooler things that she got me is one of the John Lasseter-esque Hawaiian shirts by the Ryan Spooner Company, where it has all of the, like a Toy Story theme or a Cars theme shirt, but she got me the Cars 2 theme shirt, so it has all the Cars characters and all the different, London and the Eiffel Tower.
The one he's wearing during, if you see the Disney Infinity, the Creating Infinity.
Right, so yeah, it's that shirt. So I have that shirt now. It's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, he was really excited about it.
It's not something that I'm going to wear all the time, but it's really nice. And everything in there is totally much more affordable than what you would absolutely think it is. Because,
it is.
I mean, obviously it's priced for the employees, but if we're thinking about people coming into the studio, they could be charging way more than that, and people would absolutely pay it. But it's so nice that you can get some of these things at a more affordable price. That doesn't mean everything's cheap.
Right.
It just means it's less than what you would think it would be for branded and custom merchandise. but it doesn't mean they're giving it away.
Right.
So anyways.
And of course, I think only two of the bloggers bought the La Luna maquette.
Which is just unreal. So talk about...
They still had some, so...
They still have some of those. So what it was, for anybody that may not know, is Enrico Casarosa, the director of La Luna, the short that was ahead of Brave, he wanted to create the Bambino character as a maquette, which is essentially like a miniature statue. Mm-hmm. And it was created in conjunction with him and one of the workers at the store. There's only 2 employees at the store. One of them's Valerie, the manager. And she ended up showing Julie, because she was expressing interest in the La Luna thing, some of the making of process of the La Luna maquette. So explain some of that.
Yeah, it was really cool. She just invited us, behind their desk there. And she's like, look at these pictures. They were each all 500 of these maquettes were hand painted. And every single piece is hand painted.
Right. The details.
Nothing was like mass produced by a machine. Everything was hand painted.
Yeah, it's amazing.
In stages. It wasn't like, this day I'm going to paint the whole thing. No, it was like the hat, the face, the shoes.
And they're not even flat colors, because there's a ton of shading on it.
Yes.
So it's really cool. So it's really neat that you got to see that process.
Yeah, it was really neat that she showed us.
Yeah, the pictures of one being made.
Yeah, and she helped design it with Enrico. So
right,
that was
which is really cool.
Yeah,
right, because she helps design mostly all of the merchandise that comes in, or at least a lot of the merchandise that's in there.
That was really interesting.
So that's really neat. And then, we're going to be doing a post about that maquette coming up. We've already taken photos of it, but when you see this thing, you can't even fathom the detail that's on this. I mean, the people that did this must be, that's true artisanship. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is insane, the detail that's on this thing.
It really is.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool because it comes with a little certificate of authenticity. It's signed by Enrico, hand numbered. It's a pretty neat collectible to have. It certainly wasn't cheap.
No.
But it was really neat.
It was a must-have.
Yeah, because it's one of those ones that it just seems so unique.
Yeah.
So
I know when I finished buying everything, the first purchase, because the first purchase was the biggest one. The other times I went into the store, it was just $40 here, $20 here. But my first purchase, I even called TJ. I'm like, I just want to let you know that this might just showing up on our credit card.
Yeah. So anyways, but we had already known that ahead of time that we were going to be doing that. So okay, you get out of the store, and then right from there...
We went to our classes. Classes began.
So give us an idea of, like, the first class that... well, not the first class that you went to, because we ended up changing the order for the podcast to kind of make it fit what we wanted to talk about. Mm-hmm. So the classes, though, you go in, like you said, is it still your small group, or is it the larger group?
This is still the small group. Okay, so 5 or 6 of us.
So it's a small group. You go into a room. Are they already there? Are they coming in?
Nope. Everyone was already there. The classes were spread out throughout the Steve Jobs building, the main building. So...
Were they upstairs, downstairs?
Both.
Okay, so it varied between the two. Just regular-looking conference rooms, or what are the conference rooms like?
It was different. I mean, so let's kind of talk about the audio that we're going to be listening to, because the Anthropology class...
Yep, so Anthropology 101 was your one of the ones that you went to. It was called
Anthropology 152.
Oh, 152. I apologize. Yes. You were more advanced on your first day. So Anthropology 152, Monsterizing the World with Robert Kondo and Dice Tsutsumi. And Robert Kondo is the set's art director for the film, and Dice Tsutsumi is the art director for the film. Now, before we do kick off into the audio, though, and then we'll come back to, kind of some of the things that happened after the classes for the day and things like that.
Well, to get back to what you were talking about, this class was upstairs, where photography is forbidden.
Okay.
Photography is only allowed in the main atrium area.
Right.
Not in the side wings, not upstairs.
Right, because as you were walking, you saw, like, Monsters University concept art and things like that.
I wish my eyes took so many pictures. I wish that my brain could develop them for you guys.
Yeah.
But no, it was actually upstairs. It was in a room that overlooked the atrium, which was kind of nice. And it was kind of set up like a conference room, but with so much artwork throughout the room and computers. I mean, this is where they work. This is
they have meetings on either the story or whatever. Yep.
Yeah, so it was basically a fancy conference room that was beautiful because you could see out. It wasn't four walls.
Right. So as we start to play the audio, keep in mind that there's not a lot, but there is some potential descriptions of what the artists and Pixarians are going to talk about that could discuss potential minor spoilers. And we say minor because none of it is in your face. None of it is going to give away main story plots.
They're not story plots. They are
and a lot of
small details.
Right, and a lot of them have been seen in the trailers. They tried to be cognizant of that as well because they knew that bloggers and sites were going to be talking about this. So I don't want to ruin anybody's experience, though. So if you're trying to stay away from anything related to the film, at this point you probably would want to skip ahead and just pick up and start listening again if you don't hear the Pixarian audio.
Yeah, and like we said, these are the guys who, the art director, the sets director, so they're just going to be talking about the sets. So that's the kind of small spoilers that they might reveal.
Right, and they're going to be talking about a lot of the artwork that's on the walls or things that might be on a screen in there that we can't necessarily convey in the podcast, but you can certainly follow along with what they're talking about. And if you've seen any of the trailers, you'll get what they're talking about.
Exactly.
So, and I really do think that now that we've seen the movie, I do really think that a lot of the things that they talk about will really truly enhance and broaden your experience when you do physically see the movie. So we really hope you enjoy it. Let's take a listen to the first one. Again, Anthropology 152, Monsterizing the World with Robert Kondo and Dice Tsutsumi.
Monsterification is basically the ideas that it took to kind of stylize our buildings for the monsters world. Our designers kind of had to put on the architecture hat and figure out, well, okay, so what are the problems that monster architects would have to solve that are different than our world? And so these are some of those problems. One is obviously scale. There's giant monsters and small monsters, and all of them have to be able to access our buildings. So some of the solutions we came up with were actually doors within doors, so that small monsters could walk in and reach the handle as well as larger monsters. And also we had things like this water fountain, which is so that smaller monsters don't have to stretch too far to get a drink of water, and bigger monsters don't have to stoop too low to get a drink of water. And here you can kind of see the front of our scare school. And Mike and Sully there for scale, you can see that actually this building is, the doors are made so that they could enter kind of on the smaller doors, but also that it's built for really large monsters. And it's a subtle thing, but even on the front steps, we have two different scale steps so that bigger monsters versus smaller monsters could kind of comfortably get to their classes. And that kind of brings us to the idea, big or small, monsters overall are heavy. And so we like this kind of idea of kind of bringing a heft to the monster world. And so we looked at kind of things like this and found that this trapezoidal shape kind of felt like a good heavy shape to kind of carry throughout the architecture. So you'll see it all over the place. Like in the front gate, we actually found a way to kind of get that heft to this gate by adding that kind of trapezoidal shape to it. And you'll see this also on the interiors where, you know, this is the dorm room where you see it in the window frame and some of the bed posts and things like that. And of course, we wanted to take this and find places and even details to put that trapezoid shape. And so here in brick even, you find that that shape is kind of showing up all over the place. I didn't work on the first Monsters Incorporated, but one of the nice things about Monsters University is we actually get to see more of the world. We get to see more characters, more different problems that we hadn't seen before, which is one of them being that now some of our monsters fly. And so that was a fun one to think about is, what does that mean for the architecture? So here we have the aviation school, and we thought, well, should flying monsters have to come in on the ground floor, land, and enter with everyone else? We thought, no, they should totally have their own perches on the top floor so they could land and enter the building on the top floor. So that was kind of a fun detail that we found for flying monsters. But it also, going the other way, we also found that we now have underwater monsters. So it means that part of our campus is actually submerged. This is the underwater school where students are swimming to class. It was nice designing a campus because the campus is older than some of the other parts we got to see of the monster world and Monsters Incorporated. And that meant we could be a lot more sculptural with our buildings. So here you kind of see a lot more. We love this idea that monsters just like seeing horns and tentacles and eyeballs show up in the details of their architecture. So this is kind of, on the left side, you kind of see this play on egg and dart molding, which is kind of a classic architectural motif. And we changed it to eye and dart molding. So that sort of thing we kind of found opportunities for in the architecture. And you also see that there's this kind of heft that we wanted to bring to the architecture. And I know you guys watched the film, but a fun thing to look for kind of as you're watching it maybe for a second time is we kind of hid faces in some of the buildings. So this is the exterior of the Scare School, and we kind of found opportunities to kind of hide monster faces there. And here you can see that the two windows on the dome are kind of the eyes, and the portal downstairs where you enter the building is kind of the mouth. And so we also, same as the shape of the trapezoid, we found places and opportunities to put this into the interiors and exteriors. So the interior of the Scare School actually has that same idea, and the stage you can see is kind of the mouth and the teeth. And both in big and small, we also found it in little doorways and things like that. And some of the details, we found this is the front entry of the library, and you can see that there's a little hidden face in there. And just like the trapezoid, we wanted to kind of find a way to trickle this into all the details. And we know our world is kind of powered by screens. So instead of gas meters, they've got screen meters on the outside of their houses, and those screen meters are kind of meant to look like little monsters on the side of the house. Another thing we got to see more of in the monster world, and that was fun to design, was actually vegetation. Our campus has a lot of vegetation, and so in the world that we created, we wanted to carry that same idea of like, oh, it'd be fun to design these spikes and horns in the trees as well. And one of our designers came up with this great idea of actually taking the ivy and using it to integrate with the architecture to create more of those monster faces. So this is meant to kind of look like a tentacly monster on the front facade of this building. We also looked at our natural world and tried to find relatable things that we could find in our world that we would emphasize or caricature and play with to create monster trees and bark. And so, of course, we looked at rose bushes and things with thorns and brought that idea into the bark of some of our trees. And this one, we kind of saw this tree and thought, oh my gosh, there's totally eyeballs on the side of this tree. And so we brought that idea into some of the trees that we have on our campus. A function of our world is the fact that everything is actually powered by screen. And this is something that is a rule of our world that actually affected the aesthetic of our world. So in a lot of our sets and things, you'll notice that there's pipes running along ceilings and along walls, and to anything that's powered is kind of powered by screen energy, which is kind of like a steam. So it's running through these pipes into things that need power. And those are kind of the general rules that we had that we would apply to a lot of our architecture all throughout. But one of the fun things actually about being a set designer is actually coming up with the story, finding a way to relate your sets to the story. And one thing is kind of inventing a history behind the campus. And just like these cans, one of the things that I would have loved for Dan to do in his film, but that, of course we can't stop the film to just talk about the architecture, but is that this history we made up, it's just like these cans where you need to read the visual history of something, and we're not going to stop the story to talk about it. And so in our campus, of course our school this is the founder's statue, the fountain in the middle of the quad, and we needed to imply this history. And so here's a still from the film where this is the quad. And so I'm just going to walk you through some of the decisions that are just made for this one still about the quad. So the quad being the oldest part of the campus, we wanted to make sure that it felt like that. So some of the things we came up with was, well, for generations now, monsters have been late to class, and they've been cutting across the quad. And of course, they've burned out the grass, and it's died, where monsters have been running late to class for a long time now. We also, if you looked at our campus, this kind of light stone that's lining our walkways, that our walkways are made of, are actually unique to the quad. We thought that we'll keep this for the quad because this is original to the campus and this has been there for a long time. So these cobblestones are actually, you'll only be able to find them on the quad. Also, this is where you can find the biggest trees on campus. This is the oldest trees on campus that have been there, also original to the quad. And so these are all decisions that are woven into kind of the sets and the look of our campus, because ultimately we wanted to speak to tradition. And that tradition for Monsters University is in scaring. You can study a lot of different things on the campus, but scaring is kind of what Monsters University is known for. And this is the front paw of a statue that sits out in front of the scare school. And one of the ideas we really wanted to emphasize is the fact that many scarers have come here before Mike and Sully. And there's a tradition of rubbing the front paw of the statue before your first class of scaring for good luck. And so as a set designer, we had to make sure that that statue had a polished foot, that over time, so many monsters had rubbed it that actually the tarnish and the texture had gone away, and now it was this kind of shiny foot. And Mike and Sully wanted to join that tradition. And I love this frame of the film where Mike's not in this frame, but this frame is really all about Mike. We know from watching Monsters Incorporated that little Mikey here has followed him all the way to Monsters Incorporated. And so, we thought this being a frame from his first day at the dorm, that also he would have brought his bed covers from when he was a little kid, because what we really wanted to say is that this is Mike's dream. Mike has thought about this his entire life, and everything he's done up to this moment has led to this moment of pursuing being a scarer. And so he's brought the bed covers from when he was a little child to his dorm room to pursue his dreams. And for a set designer, again, this is the stuff that we love, is kind of finding a way for our sets to relate to our characters and to help tell that story that Dan wants to tell. So with that, I'll pass it on to Dice, who's going to talk about the color and lighting of our film.
Okay, so now you know how the campus is designed with a lot of thought into it, and you can see how much we think about design every detail of the film, and the same goes with with color and lighting. This is what we call color script. You might have heard of color script from other films, but the color script is a visual roadmap of our film, and it follows color and light, and track. It keeps track of things like emotion and time of day and weather and seasons. But in this case, let's focus on this part where Mike first arrives at the school. So when Mike first arrives at Monsters University, we wanted to design lighting to emphasize this significant day of this new chapter for Mike's life. We wanted to indicate this, like full of hope and looking into his future by having him walk towards the beautiful morning sun. So in this particular scene, if you remember from the clip you saw a couple nights ago, he steps out of the bus, and there is a tree casting a shadow over the bus and Mike. But then as he crosses over the threshold, he steps into the light. And then he walks towards the light, passes the gate, and then you see this sort of vast landscape of the campus looking towards the sun. So we wanted to kind of indicate this this new beginning is about to come to his life. Also, we played with this dappled light. We noticed as we were doing research on university campuses, we felt like the dapple lights are sort of like a very iconic lighting motif in a campus. And we loved it because it kind of has this nice dancing soft lights over characters and environments, and it kind of gives this energy and uplifting feel that we wanted for this particular sequence. Also, in terms of colors, we remember from the first movie, Monsters, Inc., the world is sort of full of colorful characters and colorful palette, and we definitely wanted to carry that tradition in this film as well. With the very colorful characters, but also throughout the campus, including all the vegetations and environment is very colorfully designed as well. So as he walks through the campus, and by the time he reaches the scare school, the centerpiece of the Monsters University, you notice that it stands right up against the sun. There's a bit of a iconic sort of lighting motif we're playing with here. So in this film, Mike's journey to sort of go towards his film, go towards his dream. His dream is to become a professional scarer, to work for Monsters, Inc. And if you remember from the first movie or even the first part of our film, Monsters Inc. has this signature sort of lighting where morning sun is hitting from the front side of the building. And then we kind of did this, we flipped the logic for the obstacles that he has to overcome to achieve his dream. So his obstacles would be backlit compared to the front lighting on the Monsters Inc. So I'll show you some examples here. So we talked about Mike stepping into the light as he enters the new chapter of his life. But also later in the sequence, he steps into the shadow of the scare skull, indicating that this is the obstacle he has to overcome. It just, we're just using this kind of lighting choreography to push the story points. When it comes to Miss Dean Harstrubble, she's lit from the backside pretty much throughout the film. Like her face is in the shadow most of the time, except for a few moments that we did the opposite for story reasons. And I'm not going to tell you like where they are, but then when you see the final film, you'll know there is a reason why we lit her from the front side for certain, for a few areas. But otherwise, her face is in the shadow pretty much most of the time. Let me talk about the colors a little bit here. So we have fraternities and sororities compete against each other in these Greek scare games in our film. And obviously each team has its own identity color, like this. And of course we designed their identity colors with reasons. Of course our team with Kappa is green because it's Mike's team. And using the opposite color of green in the spectrum of the color wheel that's red, we assign red to our villain characters. Roar is the best team in the Greek scare games, and also the Dean's Harstrubble is designed around the color red. Another big thing that we did for this film, which is really exciting, this is one of those very difficult lighting choreography things that it requires a lot of coordination between many departments. Basically, in major story moments of the film, we have our main characters, Mike and Sully, interact with the light. I'll show you a couple of examples here. So we talked about this, where Mike steps into the light as he enters the campus of the school, or he steps into the shadow of Scare Skull. This example number 2 is, monsters work at night, like they work in the dark. They're more comfortable in the shadow. So we kind of had this like, can we use the light as an intimidating thing for monsters? So we have this kind of lighting motif throughout the film, where monsters are sort of like under the spotlight or the exposed lighting to kind of indicate this intimidating situation. This is one of the clips that you saw. This is from one of the clips you saw a couple of nights ago, where during the scare final, they are sort of practicing off to the corner, like in the shadow, and then they're sort of like going at each other with fierce rivalry. But after the whole incident of this scream can, you notice that there's a spotlight right in the middle of the room, and them having to step into the light, and then having to perform in front of Harstrubble under this spotlight. So, this is kind of subtly indicating this situation emotionally, but it requires a lot of coordination between animation and camera department and lighting department and even the design of the set. Everything had to work together. The last example I want to show is this, where in the beginning of the film production, we said, can we use lighting to indicate their status of friendship? Basically, this movie is so much about how they become best friends. And I did this piece of early in the beginning of the pre-production, and this scene is no longer in the film, on the final film. But we love the idea that lighting is supporting the story point of their friendship. And we did that throughout the film as well. So one of the examples that I can show you here is in the beginning of the semester when they're in the scarce classroom. Mike has a lot to catch up with Sully. Mike is behind Sully, talented Sully. Mike is in the shadow, Sully is in the light. But then as the semester progresses, Mike works really hard, and actually here he passes Sully, and he enters the light and leaving Sully behind the shadow. Mike gaining the momentum in this semester montage, he flips and he shows his grade. And by the end of the semester, they're standing exactly where they were in the beginning of the semester, but this time Mike is in the light and Sully's in the shadow. So this is just a small sort of portion of the examples I could show you, but then we did this kind of careful coordination, choreography of light and color throughout the film. And so when you finally, when you see the final film, hopefully you can feel it. It's one of those things we try really hard that it doesn't become a distraction, but rather to sort of support the feeling of the story that we're trying to tell.
Yeah, and I will say that the environments and the sets that they created are so, like what they talked about, just so beautifully lit with those warm colors and bright colors like the original Monsters Incorporated. You really do feel it. Mm-hmm. And we loved in that discussion how cool it was that they carried the theme from Monsters Incorporated, where they had the doors within the doors, so that way smaller monsters could get through and bigger monsters could get through. And they added even more details to Monsters University to accommodate monsters of all sizes and types, like how they talked about they had the flying monsters, so they had the perches on the buildings, and then they had the underwater monsters. And this is crazy.
I know, all details that are like so quick but so significant to me.
Yeah, and when you're watching the movie too, definitely keep your eyes on, like when they had that quad discussion, how it was older, and how the old elements there were that the trees were larger in that area than anywhere else because that was the oldest part of campus, mm-hmm. and how the grass was worn out in the quad because the students were crossing it all the time. I mean, it's just like, how do they think of all this stuff and keep track of it all?
Exactly.
To get it all in the film, because it just seems like
it's so real. Those are elements that are real. Those are everyday life elements that you wouldn't think of, oh, we need to add this in there. Because you're just used to it.
Right, and I know they had, obviously done their research trips, where they talked about the dappled lighting and those kind of things. And that's probably where they got a lot of that from. But how do you remember all that? I mean, I know they're out there taking pictures and everything, but it's just like, that's the magic of Pixar.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah. So the other thing I loved that Dice Tsutsumi talked about as well is how we really had to believe and feel that it's Mike's dream to work for Monsters Incorporated. And the one thing that I really liked about that from they were conveying that from a lighting standpoint, they were conveying it from a set standpoint, but from a story standpoint, when you watch the movie, you totally feel that as well. And the one thing I really liked that I was able to connect to in the theater there is because, the way it's Mike's dream to be to Monsters Incorporated, and how what we're hearing on all these talks from Dice and Robert, and it's kind of our dream to work for Pixar, and how many other people are listening to this podcast that it's their dream, or to be within Pixar as well. Mm-hmm. So it's, when you're watching the movie, Mike's desire to be within Monsters Incorporated and all of the detail and how great the story is, it translates directly to people wanting to work at Pixar and that kind of internal struggle. Mm-hmm. So like what we're kind of going through right now in our personal...
Or to anyone's dream in general, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what makes the authenticity of the story of this, flow so well, is that you can relate to it for a lot of reasons and elements.
A lot of reasons, yeah.
Yeah. So I think this movie's going to definitely make people want to work for Pixar even more. And between our trips, with Julie and I have actually started looking into at least early exploration of animation courses, and because I'd like to do something with lighting and shading, those types of things, because it's just such a fascinating area. And as a photographer, on the side as well, I see the world, that's how I see it as far as light and shadow and those kind of things. So that's kind of the area that I'm being drawn to. Julie wants to make more toys, and she wants to work in the consumer products division. And
or story.
Story as well. Yeah. But it's one of those things that, we are going to start more seriously looking into it. And I'm sure that this is something that a lot of people listening can associate with as well, is, from our perspective, we're not old, but we're older. We're, in our 30s, and it's hard when you have a mortgage and all these other things going on. to uproot those things and potentially think about moving and having to spend more money to go back to school, even though we've gone to school. But it's one of those things that underlying itch is always there.
Yeah.
So it's, whether...
And I made a comment to TJ. I told him, well, you're not getting any younger.
Yeah. She said, you're not getting any younger. So I guess if I got to do it, I got to start looking into it now. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. We don't know financially if that's a possibility, but it's something that we're going to be looking into. And if we do, it'll be interesting because then we'll be able to throw some more personal perspective of animation in there. And that's another reason we frankly might do it, is just because that'll give us a deeper knowledge of the industry, of movies, of the whole Pixar process. Not that we'd be learning directly from Pixar, but you'll be able to pick up more, being more integrated into it. So we thought it could be interesting from that perspective, even if it doesn't turn into a career or anything, which it certainly may not. It'd be a big change.
Yeah.
So, all right, so after you get out of the class, there was a whole bunch of classes that day, which we'll hear split out,
Yeah, within the next 2 podcasts, we'll hear the other classes. There was 5 of them all together, and they were incredible.
So what happens after the classes?
After the classes, we were treated to lunch on the Monsters University quad, which was basically on the lawn in between the Steve Jobs building and the Brooklyn building. Lunch was incredible. We basically ate lunch. There was a bunch of tables outside, but it was the entire campus's lunch. The whole the
employees and everybody
everyone
was
eating lunch.
Yep.
It was a gorgeous day. San Francisco, I don't think it ever rains there. It was
well, it's Emeryville.
Yeah, Emeryville, I'm sorry. But it was a beautiful day. Bright blue sky. Perfect. So, people were eating outside. Some were eating inside on the lawn. It was like, I was just watching people and being like, oh my gosh, there's like 100 people out of here. And they all work here.
Right, so
There's like 20 of us.
Seeing some people you may recognize and things like that, but obviously, you're there for the Monsters University event.
I'm not there to bother anybody on their, their day, but just watching and just being like, gosh, I was just in awe.
Yeah, so after the lunch, you had some roundtable discussions, which, again, we'll hear the one with Dan Scanlon, the director, today on this podcast coming up. But then after the roundtables, you had a snack session with Peter Sohn, which is
the voice of Squishy
in the film, right? Exactly. And then you had some pre-activities of playing ping pong and things like that while you were waiting for the one-on-one interviews.
Yeah.
And you had your one-on-one interview with
Robert Kondo,
which, again, the sets art director for the film. So that's why we wanted to pair this one up right after that discussion, so that way you can get the comparison of that. So that was a pretty neat discussion you were able to have sitting down.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to each have about 10 minutes to interview, some of the Pixarians. And I had requested to speak with Robert Kondo, and I was lucky enough to be able to, get my first choice. So he was gracious, and it was almost, I don't know, you might be able to hear it in my voice, but I was kind of nervous.
Well, sure, because you went from a group setting where, people are all in the room together. There's a little bit more comfort there. But now all of a sudden it's like literally you're face to face with him, and you better start asking questions, and he's going to start answering. And
yeah, just because, I know he would, he did sets for Ratatouille, and I just think the sets art directors, and there's so much that goes into it. He's an artist, and it's someone that you look up to, and you don't want to make a fool of yourself, but you have a shaky voice, and oh my gosh, I'm asking a weird question. But I do think I did ask a good question about the A113.
Yeah, well, yeah, and you'll hear that in there. So to start off, we're going to kick right into his response, but the first question that you asked essentially was, you re-kicked off the fact that he was a set designer on Ratatouille, and you said you love how Pixar digs into all those little details, and you asked him on Monsters University, what were some of those set details that were really important to him that you couldn't and didn't want to have overlooked? So listen to his response, and then the rest of your one-on-one.
One of the big things for me is actually the Scare School, the interior of it. There are monster motifs all throughout that room, and it's a dark room, and a lot of times we see it in the dark, and as a set designer, I'm always like, oh gosh, it's great that the lights are the way it is. It's very theatrical, but I'm always like, oh gosh, I want people to see this. And the reason why is because we really felt like that is kind of cornerstone for what's monstery. It's supposed to be where, and it's an extension of hardscrabble. And I felt like, we really kind of have a lot of teeth motifs. And if you look at the floor, our graphic designer, Craig Foster, designed this beautiful kind of scale-like floor pattern on the ground. And there's also, that same motif you can see in the windows and the stained glass behind her. And so there was a lot of we really focused on kind of, much like Cousteau's, we were focused on the floor because that's where you see. We really, in this film, it was really about kind of dialing in that monstery feeling without kind of getting in your face about it. And so that room in particular, even kind of the dome and if you look at kind of the ribbing of the dome, it's kind of echoes a bit of like Hardscrabble's wings. And so we tried really hard to make sure that, especially in that room, it's kind of like it kind of is a special room because it's where Mike is living. I'm so excited to go to school, and this is within the school. This is where he wants to be, is in this room studying scaring. So that for me is kind of the kind of little details that show up is all throughout that room. We tried really hard too. Another thing we did was, because we knew it was going to be in the dark, we put little brass accents all over the room. So you'll see, like on the top of the columns, there's these like winged like characters, and in the center of them they have these little brass eyeballs. And the reason why we did that was because we knew it was going to be in the dark. So we wanted something that you could catch a highlight on, even in the shadow, so that you could sense the room without having to see all the details of the architecture. And so that was kind of a design thing we did, working with lighting to make sure that things didn't fall away completely to dark, but that actually you had little hints and your brain would fill in the rest. So it was a different kind of challenge than Ratatouille for sure. Yeah.
Now, being a set designer, is it your team that puts like the A113 where it is in this film?
Yeah, that's actually a decision that's made by the director, where to kind of put things like that. And so all of that stuff, oftentimes is because there's certain traditions at Pixar, we want to make sure that those things are sprinkled throughout.
Yeah. So I just wasn't sure whose role it is.
Yeah, it's my role to help execute. Okay. So when they're like, let's stick it there, then it's like, okay, what does it look like, and how are we going to see it in camera, and all of that sort of stuff. But actually, where it sits in the film is not, I can suggest, but ultimately that's the director's decision. Yeah.
My husband actually pointed something out to me. My husband and I run our website together.
That's awesome.
And he had already noticed that triad, kind of that shape in the bricks and in the rooms.
Wow.
So when you said that today,
that's pretty amazing.
My heart broke that
that's
he
awesome.
wasn't here, because he would have lost his mind.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I immediately texted him. I'm like, you would have freaked out.
Yeah. That's so cool.
It was really cool that you showed out even more details.
Yeah.
Because obviously you didn't see the first, 40 minutes of the film like I was able to see. But
that's super cool that he noticed that.
He noticed the slug's teeth in the American trailer were shorter, and then the Japanese trailer were longer.
Wow.
And this one they're longer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so you posted that on your site, and then sort of like no.
Yeah.
But one more question. For being a set designer, does the color script help you and your team work?
Yeah. The color script is about lighting ultimately, but the most important thing that it is it's really a roadmap for the emotion. And so Dice and I actually work fairly closely while he's constructing and painting out the color script. Him and I work really close to make sure that all the design work we're doing is working with that. And it's not just always about saying the same thing that the lighting is. So it's not always about like, oh, it's a dark scene, so make everything dark. It's really about that choreography and making decisions about, if you're gonna try to be really funny here, maybe we make it really serious to contrast the two. And it's this balance that we kind of play all the time. But Dice and I have always worked, as long as he worked on Toy Story 3, and he and I worked both closely in the same kind of roles on Toy Story 3. And so,
you guys have a really good rhythm.
Yeah, and we've always had one wall between us. Our offices have always just been right next door to each other. And so on this film in particular, I feel like we took our kind of relationship relationship in making film to the next level. Like, we were just able to kind of communicate better. There was no kind of, what you doing? It's just straight into making the film. And so that allowed us to be a lot more coordinated about things, so that, because even though he ultimately, tells everybody where the light is, I've still got to place that light there, so I've still got to make sure that, if he's kind of, I want this to be lit by a street lamp, then I've got to make sure that our team is sticking a street lamp in there. And also, because I was responsible for the shading, which is the materials and of all the sets, that all is color as well. And so it was important for him and I to be on the same page, so that if, he's like, gosh, I really want this scene to be very blue, and I'm in there sticking orange walls, then everything's going to go kind of a muddy brownish gray, and so, we're always working on it. And also because there is a collaboration that happens amongst myself and Dan and the production designers and the other art directors, and the DPs, where all of us need to be kind of in concert with each other, making sure that because a lot of times, the director will say like this, give you this gem, and say like, he may be in a lighting review with Dice and say like, I want it to feel like this, and I'm like, I know exactly now what to do. And so it's important for all of us to be always communicating and working together, because the color script is that amazing. It's an amazing document, because it really is a map for everybody to kind of calibrate where they are and make decisions and know what path to go and what path to lead their teams down. And so, absolutely, we're always on a daily basis checking in constantly about the decisions we're making with our teams and respectively. And it gets easier, because at a certain point you're making, Dice is making that. And so, one day it's like, I think we should do this. And then it's like the next day it's like, did you hear? Like, things are changing. And so we've got to shift together. And so in that way, it gets easier in time, because at a certain point things start to lock in, and then you're able to just move forward. And you're even able to kind of make decisions without having looked at it, because you're like, I know what's appropriate now. It's kind of the fun part of it. It's like he and I always are throwing ideas back and forth, as well as the other people working on the film. So Dice and I always say that we're there to kind of collect the best ideas and draw out or paint out whatever that is. So the ideas actually come from all over the place, and so in that way, that's also what the color script does, is it kind of captures the best ideas that have been thrown out there and encapsulate us in one document, which makes it easy for me. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, so pretty cool to have a one-on-one, eh?
Yeah.
Get some of those questions answered.
Even though I just sound like I'm excited, I'm nervous.
Yeah, well, that's okay. That's okay. I mean, it came across, you asked some good questions there. Like, I love the fact that you asked about the A113. I thought that was pretty neat. I didn't know you were going to ask that, because we had prepped some questions ahead of time. I didn't know you were going to ask that, and I thought it was neat how his team helps decide where to, or how to place those. Not where, but how to place them.
I mean, ultimately, the director, but it's neat because, he's this sets director. So, I mean, A113 has to go on a set. So I just thought of it. When we were sitting there, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to ask this.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. And for our listeners, you can rest assured, since we've seen the whole movie, that all of your favorites, the A113, Pizza Planet truck, what else am I forgetting here? The Pixar ball, the Luxo Junior ball, that's all in there, as well as the cameos that Dan Scanlon has talked about. It's not...
There's some other hidden things in there.
There's a few others. So yeah, definitely you're going to have your, fun watching it and catching them all and that kind of stuff.
Play scavenger hunt while you watch.
Yeah, I would say it's not as difficult to find them as Brave, where it was in Roman numerals above the door and something crazy like that. It's not like it's right out there in front of your face, but it's not as hard. I think Brave was one of the hardest ones.
Brave was one of the hardest ones.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty neat. So also, I loved in that discussion when he talked about that they focused on that, creating that monster-y feeling without it getting in your face. Mm-hmm. I thought that was really just, again, typical Pixar. It's not in your face. It's just subtle, yet still classy, yet still conveys monster. And I love the fact that they had to figure out, and they do this in other movies too, that even though the room is dark, they wanted it to stay dark, they still needed to have a sense of the room, so they put those brass elements so that way highlights could still catch on it from the lights.
Right.
I thought that was really cool. And when you see the movie, you can tell in that room that it's,
it's massive, but you know where the boundaries are.
Right. So yeah, it definitely achieved that. And I also thought it was funny that you brought up that I had already seen the triad shape.
I was freaking out. I had to tell him that, that my heart ached that you weren't there to tell him that.
Yeah.
Because I know honestly, for our listeners, I mean, TJ watches these trailers and he catches things. He's very analytical, this one. But he caught that shape and he's like, look, it's in the bedpost. It's in here. It's on the archway. It's on the, the door frames.
Right. So
when he mentioned it in our class, and I knew I was meeting with him later,
right.
I knew I had to tell him that.
Yeah, and I thought it's funny that when you brought up the slug's teeth as well.
Yes, I had to bring that up too.
So the other part that we cut out of your one-on-one with him was how you guys essentially derailed the meeting because there was another person in the room.
Yes, there was basically a moderator to tell you our time. I mean, we went longer than 10 minutes. I think I was about a little over 20 minutes because we derailed.
Right, so it gets derailed. You guys start looking it up on our website right then and there to see the screenshots that I took of the difference in the slug's teeth size. And for anybody listening that may not know, I had noticed that there was, in the Japanese version of the trailer, there was the slug that says, "Oh man, I can't be late on my first day." And he starts running. His teeth are longer than in the American version, which was in the first and second trailer.
Where his lips just move back
Where
and
his lips
forth.
just move. Well, anyways, so we had pointed that out. So they derail the meeting. They start looking it up. That's what that was about.
Yes, and Robert was very impressed that TJ had found that, and we had noted it on our site.
Did you talk to Dan about that?
I did talk to Dan
That's
about
right. You talked to Dan about that as well, that we had noticed that. Dan was
impressed as well. He's like, I can't... What? He's like, I can't believe you saw that. He goes, no one noticed that.
Right, and why did they change it?
It is actually going to be longer. So for anyone
in the third trailer, the newest trailer in the American version, it's longer now.
Yes, they are longer.
And there's some different mouth movements as well.
They're longer in the feature film, and he said that he decided to have them longer because it was goofier.
Yeah, he felt it made it look a little more humorous.
These are 18-year-old kids. When we were 18, we were goofy kids.
Right.
You're goofy looking. You're still growing up.
You are still.
I know.
All right, that's a little sidebar there.
Ago.
You're right. But yeah, so I thought that was pretty neat that you were able to kind of, talk to Dan about that, bring that up, and then also with Robert with that triad shape. I felt really proud in that moment.
It became personal. It became like friends talking, which was nice. So
yeah. So after you had your one-on-one, you had, we had talked about that there were some roundtable discussions in there as well. So in this roundtable discussion, it was the first one that you had. Mm-hmm. It was with Dan Scanlon. So talk about it again, just in a regular conference room.
Yeah, you're in a regular conference room, and I was with two other the Pixar bloggers. So they kind of told me what was going on, and I thought maybe, he would come in, he kind of talks about the film again. No, it's basically we sit in a seat. I was lucky enough to sit directly across from Dan Scanlon. You sit, he walks in, everyone puts their microphone and recording devices directly in front of him, and he just sits there until someone asks the first question.
Yeah, so it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So we wanted to say that so that way people wouldn't feel like all of a sudden like, hey, there's no discussion in this, it's just the Q&A. So the first question that gets asked is from another one of the sites that's there, and they ask how the process was different for Dan on Monsters University since he's worked on sequels before for 101 Dalmatians 2 and The Little Mermaid 2, and they asked not only how is this different as a prequel rather than a sequel, but how is it working on this as a theatrical release rather than a home movie direct-to-video or DVD release? So let's listen to that first response that Dan gives.
Yeah, for some reason I've made a career of sequels, not unintentionally, but I think this was just a challenge. This idea came up early on to do a prequel, to go back in time and tell the story of how these guys met, and one of the challenges of any sequel is that you're you're telling a story, but you're essentially creating a new game using the pieces from an existing game. It's as if someone took chess and said, here, come up with a new game as popular as chess using these pieces, but only these pieces, which is a great sort of box to be put in, or a great problem to have, I suppose. But with a prequel, there's this added difficulty of everyone knows how the story ends. And I think in order to use a prequel the best way, you have to embrace that. You have to own that fact and use it to tell your story. In the case of Mike's story, it's very much a story about someone coming up against a failure. And so knowing how the story ends is really helpful for us to tell that story and almost use it dramatically. We know how the story is going to end, and we kind of hope it doesn't end that way because of the new information that we learned about Mike at the beginning of the film and how much it means to him. But yeah, it was an interesting challenge after years of sequels to try a prequel.
One thing that Kelsey was telling us earlier is that kind of, when you think about the movie as a whole, it's the story of when one door closes, another one opens. And do you feel like, does that make it easier to kind of get started once you have that log line, or did that take some time getting to?
I think it helps. I think we always try to start with a theme and a basic emotional through line, but as I'm sure Kelsey mentions, the stories here change a lot. And so a lot of times we find ourselves getting off track, and that helps us get back on track. But then we find ourselves sometimes abandoning the original idea. I mean, we had versions of the story that were Sully's story, where we really felt like we wanted to tell his story, but we kept coming back to Mike. We kept coming back to essentially that log line. Funny how sometimes you go through all these different versions and all these different paths, and in the end, you do kind of come back to the original idea that meant something to you. Which I think was definitely the case with this film.
Did you decide early on how many years prior to Monsters, Inc. that this one would take place? I mean, how many years is supposedly elapsed between when they're in college and when they're actually in the first film?
I think it's about 10 to 15 years. Kelsey, I think, actually made a chart at one point. He's very chart-oriented, which is great, of like exactly what years, what happened in between and all that. But yeah, I think it's about 10 or 15 years. And but we basically knew we wanted to be college age around that time.
Yesterday you kind of spoke briefly on the backpacks were a big technical challenge. Can you explain why backpacks?
No, I can't. I have no idea. We were just laughing at the fact that with every Pixar movie there's some technological breakthrough, hair, the ocean and waves, and it's usually something that looks really impressive on screen once you've accomplished it. And early on, I was told backpacks are really hard, and it's a college movie, and there's people with backpacks, and I still don't totally understand why technically, but they're just a backpack, especially on fur, and it's got to react as they're moving. And mainly, the big technological problem with this, or trick with this film, was just that it was so dense. There's so many students, and I think the issue became so many students with backpacks, and needing that to sell to college, But there's some backpacks in there, and they look great, but I feel like I'm not sure people will get up and applaud when they see them, sadly, because we worked very hard.
Why have them meet during college for the first time instead of like high school or elementary school?
Well, in the first film, they actually say, "You've been jealous of my good looks since 4th grade," and in the teaser, they go on and on about 5th grade. So that was something we talked about early on. We chose college because we wanted to see their relationship develop when they were adult enough to still be more or less similar to the characters we remember from the first film. And we also felt like college is so much about self-discovery, figuring out who you are. It just felt like the perfect place to do this. But we had that line, that line was out there. So we tried versions where they met young, and then we kind of skipped ahead to college. And we knew we didn't want to make Monsters Elementary. We had no interest in that. And honestly, it became a thing where you sort of felt like you were missing the relationship grow because you jumped ahead. And any way we sliced it, and it was really Pete Docter, the original director, and John Lasseter, who finally kind of said to me, it's great that you're honoring that, but you have to do what's right for the story. And you have to do what's right for both stories in the long run. And so we made a tough decision to just have them meet in college and put that line aside. So the good thing is the only reason that line was in the first film was to just give you the feeling that these guys have known each other a long time. And I think that college still does that. So yeah, now we joke that that's just an old monster expression. You've been jealous of my good looks since the 4th grade. That's what monsters always say to each other. So luckily I feel like when you watch the movies together, the spirit of it still works great.
How easy or difficult is it to make a G-rated college movie?
What are you talking about?
There's probably no beer.
Yeah. Well, you know what we realized early on was like as long as they're kind of wild and ruckus and yelling and smashing things and eating too much, that all kind of subs in for the feel, and it's also a funner challenge because they're monsters. They can be gross and knocking things over and eating God knows what. So it all had that same feel without having to go down that road.
Any inspirations besides like the Revenge of the Nerds or Animal House? Is there any old school or anything else that
I feel like we're all big movie buffs here, and so with any movie, we always watch as many movies in that genre or in that sort of style of filmmaking. We watch tons of reference movies, so we certainly watched a lot of college movies without any one particular one in mind. Although one thing we noticed, for whatever reason, it seems like every college movie takes place in the 80s. I don't know why that was such a big time. So even though we always want Monsters, Inc. to feel of just sort of a magical, non-specific time, we did give a little touch of the 80s nod in there. So there's like the character designers and everything were always throwing in mullets here and there or some just little color suggestions of the 80s, which I think works really well.
But the other issue here is, you take a character that everyone knows from, the first film, Sully, and at least for the half hour, 45 minutes that we saw, he's kind of a self-involved jerk, and that's kind of a bold choice with a character who people like as much, and more to the point, a lot of consumer product out there, So I mean,
and that was an interesting moment too. Was when we were talking about who these characters were. Well, we realized Sully's a really nice guy, and that's kind of his character in the first film, but he's got such a incredible scenario to play against that it carries him a lot. But we kind of had to figure out who he was, and more importantly, it is him at 18, and we were all different at 18, and so we wanted to make sure that this was a story of how these guys became who they were, and so they had to come from somewhere. So we had even talked about versions where Sully was just sort of a quiet, shy guy or didn't think he was a good scare, and we thought, look at him, he's enormous, he looks like a scare. Any way we said it wasn't believable, and we thought we should own that. It makes sense that at 18 he would be looking the way he does, be this cocky guy, and also given Mike's story, Sully had to kind of be the opposite of that. He had to be the other philosophy on what makes a scare scary. And so we figured, well, if we're seeing him through Mike's eye, then absolutely he can be a little bit more arrogant if as long as Mike is also rolling his eye and saying this guy's a jerk. The fun of it was then having John Goodman take it and make it sort of what we always hope is sort of a lovable jerk, that he's sort of charming. He's the guy that you roll your eyes at, but you kind of laugh at. And so John, when we told him, he's all of us when we were 18, John was like, oh yeah, I've been this guy, and really leans back and just kind of eats up the room and pours on the cockiness. And so when I heard him do it, I thought, this is going to be great. And it is going to make people say, that's not my Sully, but I figured, well, you're going to learn how your Sully became this nice guy.
Now, but stressing that point, did you build your story back from the turn? I mean, obviously, again, we haven't seen what it is, the moment that cements their friendship, when he turns it. But was that, it's like, okay, we have this and now we build back from that?
Absolutely, and I feel like that is part of the fun of a prequel, or even the fun of, like, you know, looking at old pictures of people you didn't know back then, and saying, "Oh my, is that your haircut?" Or even learning that wow, you used to be like that, and that was part of the fun with all these characters, was to reverse them a little bit, and then let their friendship turn them into who they are. It makes who they are more powerful in the next film when you know that they are those characters we love because of each other.
What about Billy? Because, you know, Billy's kind of a force of nature to begin with, and, you know, we still recognize him as the Mike from Monsters, Inc., and here he's a little more naive, a little more innocent.
So that was the flip for him, and it was really fun having both the guys kind of hear these pitches and then own them. And we knew Mike's got to be Mike, he's got to be funny, he's got to be precocious. But we also have to really get behind his dream and believe in it and believe in him in order to follow the movie. So he has to be sincere. That was the biggest, I think, new part for Billy was, this is your character's movie, and we have to believe in this little guy. So even though you're being funny and cracking jokes, we actually have to feel that this dream really means something to you. And Billy's a great actor, so it was really fun to see him take that character into these more sort of, like you said, naive, which we all were at 18 as well, or eager place, and I think it was a lot of fun for him to take the character there. Sorry.
There was always an underlying darkness and sense of fear and melancholy that paid off wonderfully in the first film. Mm-hmm. Are you able to go there and reproduce that here as well?
That's always been my hope. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the first film, and even though we wanted to, again, do a fun college movie, we also want it to be a movie that stays with people and that has emotion to it. And so, you know, we're inherently telling a story. Mike's story is a little bit of a tragic one. We know how it's going to end, and you guys saw the opening of the movie. We know how much it means to him now. So both those things are in direct conflict with each other. My hope is that at this point in the movie, you almost kind of hope the movie isn't going to end the way you know it is. But what we don't know is what all that's going to look like. We don't know what is that going to mean for Mike. What is it going to mean his relationship with Sully, and kind of how it will all shake out. And I think as a result, it does kind of go to some dark places here or there. But I think they're dark places we've all experienced in our life. We've all come up against closed doors, you know, as you said.
Are the actors able to improv at all with their dialogue?
Yeah, a little bit. It was really fun. We'd get John and Billy together sometimes because they like each other and they like playing off each other, and it just brings the energy up in the room. And so inherently they, you know, improvise a little bit. Half of it is unusable and totally, you know, like, that's hilarious. We cannot say that in this movie. But
also deal with the fact that, you know, your people said it takes 29 hours to render one frame. Right?
Yeah.
And so you can't just go change that and say, I don't like it, you know, I'm throwing it out, go do it, we're going to go do all that again. Like, how much can you change, and how much of this do you have to actually do in advance and agree upon versus doing that kind of improv?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we try. It's tough to get spontaneity in animation, so any way we can. I mean, the actors are recorded way before we render anything, so we can try all sorts of stuff and try it out in editorial, and we're always looking for a sense of spontaneity. You want to feel like this is just happening. So we do we play early, and then we try to narrow our scope near the end.
Quickly, what is the decision making behind Hardscrabble's change of sex?
Yeah, for me it was, you know, I realized at one point that we never got to see any great female scares in the first film. It wasn't a part of the story. We didn't hear many of them talk. We didn't really quite know anything about them. So I just felt really strongly that it would be a great way to open up the world, to just really showcase a great female scare. So we made a change to her model. She was looked like that before. And Helen Mirren just brought so much to the role herself, and just so much, such an intimidating quality, but also so intelligent and strong, and so yeah. So sometimes big decisions, you know. The great thing I think about working here and working with Corey Ray, our producer, is that if a decision was going to make the story better, we'd do it. You know what I mean? They're not always easy decisions, and it does sometimes mean putting the brakes on everything. But if it's right, we have to do it.
And that's the keystone of Pixar, doing what's right for the film, no matter what. So I thought it was pretty cool that you were able to ask the follow-up question of the backpack discussion. So at the
Blue Umbrella themed reception the night before.
So talk about that first.
Yeah, Dan and I talked to him for 20-25 minutes about a lot of things, and we got talking about technical challenges, and I asked him if he had a Yeti's Cave challenge, which is basically the technical challenge of the Yeti's Cave from Monsters, Inc. It's a term that a lot of the Pixarians still use, and he's like, oh my gosh, yes. Like,
he said there was a crazy hard... Yeah,
well, first off, he was floored that I knew the term Yeti's Cave. I just assumed a lot of people might have asked him that. So that was kind of cool. But, he said, yes, no, I have there was a technical challenge. It was the backpacks. They were beyond difficult.
Right, and he describes that in there, but it's really cool that, at the beginning of that, he kind of said, like... he came back and looked at you, is what you were describing to me, and he said, hey, yesterday we were talking about this. And
so it was kind of cool that during the meeting, because we were, cracking up about, the technical challenges and just things that, lighting and stuff like that. So it was kind of cool that, he discussed to the group what we had talked about the day before when I asked him, like, can you go into more detail about why it was so difficult? Because when we had talked the night before, we were bouncing from...
topic to topic and area to area.
Yeah, Dan Scanlon is from Michigan as well, and us being from Michigan, we were talking a lot about that. So it was just really interesting. Another interesting thing that Dan had told me was when we were talking about us being from Michigan, Don Carlton was originally going to have a Michigan accent.
Don Carlton, he's the returning to school.
He's the mature student.
The mature student, yes, returning to school after getting laid off from his sales job. Yes. So he said he wanted him originally to have a Michigan accent.
Yes, but of course the actor has a Chicago accent, so he went more Chicago than more Michigan.
Right, and if he was going to do it Michigan, I'm sure it would have been more of a northern Upper Peninsula, like Yooper kind of, hey, how you doing, eh?
Well, that kind of... Yeah, kind of like that. So that was really interesting detail that not a lot of people might know, but...
Right. But he does have a pretty cool, kind of like a Chicago downtown accent.
It really works for him. It's perfect. But I just thought that was an interesting little tidbit that
you guys talked about.
And tried to do our best bad Michigan accents to each other. So it was kind of funny.
And speaking of Michigan, Dan is going to be coming on May 29th to the Detroit Institute of Arts for an additional screening of Monsters University. And just to let our listeners know, we are going to be attending that event, so we'll be sure to report from that. We do have an afterglow that happens after the film that we'll be attending, so we'll be able to hopefully have some more time and catch some more of Dan's ear to talk about this. So if anybody has any questions that they may want to ask Dan, certainly let us know.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We can't guarantee that we'll either A, have a chance to talk to him, or B, be able to ask that question, or it may be asked by someone else and we don't want to repeat it. But if you have anything, let us know. We'd be happy to, pass that question along to Dan if we have that opportunity. So the other thing in that final discussion, and then we'll start talking about our second trip to Pixar and some of the more things that we saw within the studios, is that I also loved that Dan talked about the character flip decisions of how Sully was a little cockier at the beginning and Mike was a little more naive at the beginning. Because... like he talked about with everybody, like you even said, you look a little goofier, you are more naive. And I think it's cool that character shift kind of happens throughout this movie, so that way they can grow and you get a little closer to understanding how they became who they are in Monsters Incorporated. I just thought that was a cool little story arc that they put in there. Because obviously, as one of the people that was asking questions in the room said, he kind of comes across as a little bit of a jerk. And although we may not like the fact that they just asked it like that, like, hey, he's a jerk.
Yeah.
But it still is. It was cool with the answer that Dan gave. How he talks about that character arc, how he has to be a little less cocky over time because he did come in being this big scary monster who's a natural type scarer.
Yeah, but obviously being in college and even in high school, you can relate to those attitudes and how they can change in a couple months.
Sure.
With, going through things. So.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about our Partysaurus Rex, our custom...
let's go ahead and say that be sure to tune in to our next 2 podcasts where we're going to talk about the rest of these events. There's so many other classes.
Right, roundtables.
Yeah, the next one really dives into characters, which is so amazing, and it was one of my favorite classes that will be discussed next week.
Yeah, so definitely listen for that one. So, Partysaurus Rex. We took our custom Partysaurus Rex on our adventure and vacation to California, and we traveled up the coast from San Diego to San Francisco, and essentially ended up in Emeryville going to the studios. So we wanted to take Rex there as kind of like this, final journey of our Partysaurus Rex. So it starts out, just a funny side note, traveling with Julie with Partysaurus Rex is kind of stressful, only from the sense that she's constantly worried that somebody's going to touch him, that he's going to break, that a hair, one of his hair pieces, because it's all clay, for his hair. So when she puts him through the scanner at the airport, she's got this box and she's holding up the flaps, and the people are looking at her like, "What's so special about this toy?"
Yes. Thankfully, the wonderful TSA at the Detroit airport, they put their arms through to make sure they would grab the box so that those car wash flaps wouldn't move the box.
Right,
so
knock
Rex
it over.
Wouldn't fall and his hair wouldn't break.
Yeah.
They probably thought I was just crazy. I don't care. I'll carry around a toy all day long.
Right.
It doesn't bother me, but I don't want him to break.
Yeah. So the first thing that kind of happens when we get there, we spent some time in San Diego. That was a little bit combination business trip and then vacation. We travel up to Anaheim, and one of the first things we did after we checked into the Disney, the hotel, the Grand Californian Hotel, is we met up with Marco from Pizza Planet Truck, or as you may also know him as the Road to Pixar, which last year, about a year ago this time, is when they were in Pixar themselves, because they had recreated a 100% accurate replica of the Pizza Planet truck.
Right.
And so we're out there, we figure we've got to get in touch with these guys and see if we can meet up with them. So we did, and luckily Marco was like, "Absolutely, I'll come hang out." So
he was gracious. He was like, "I'll come pick you up."
Right, yeah. So
let's go get some Italian ice.
Yeah, and by the way, the Italian ice at Joe's Ice, I think it's in Garden Grove.
Yes, Garden Grove, California.
It's fantastic. Turns out when we're out there, we end up meeting the owner. He comes by. There's all these other people that are coming by, and they're like...
met one of our fans, Jenny, and one of our readers. She was there.
Right.
And then we met 2 other wonderful people, Hanukkah and Tyler.
Right. Crazy. They're like, "Is that Partysaurus Rex?" I mean, like, it was just wild seeing people's faces. But it was when Marco comes to pick us up in the truck, the guy at like the valet area of the hotel is like, "Is that for you?" Like, he's like, "What is this car?" So I mean, he was just like, everywhere we went, it was so cool to be in the car and see the gawking.
Yeah, driving, and you'd get horns, and people would like roll up next to us and like roll down the window and be like, "That's awesome."
Yeah, they just go, "That's awesome," or like, "That's so cool." And then at a stoplight, it's just every time you look over, there's a camera taking pictures. It's so cool. I wish that like...
I'm trying to talk TJ into making a Michigan version of the Pizza Planet truck. I think we could do it.
That's Marco. That's Marco's thing.
It is.
So, but yeah, she just wants one because it was so cool.
It was honestly, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, and we put a little on our adventures of our Partysaurus Rex.
We didn't film much of it just because, it's hard. It was hard to, but there is a little bit.
Yeah, we have a little bit of footage of driving in the truck, so if you haven't seen that, definitely check it out. But it was really cool, like Julie said, to meet up with Jenny and one of our readers, and then, Marco ended up at the end of the night, after we hung out for a couple hours, just talking and laughing and having a great time. We went back
to the hotel.
And just... what a great time. So thank you again to Marco, to the Pizza Planet truck team, for putting that together and just, letting us kind of take a little bit of that excitement and experience it as well. So that was neat. So after we get out of there, the next day we go to Disney California Adventure. And then as soon as we're walking in,
we hear, "Oh my gosh, Are you guys from Pixar Post?"
Yeah, so somebody recognizes us right away, and I'm sure it wasn't us that they recognized.
It was the Partysaurus Rex that I am carrying into Disney's California Adventure. And basically, since we were staying at the Grand Californian Hotel, there's the entrance right into California Adventure. And we got in there before the park even opened, so we're ushered through basically the crowd in the ropes into the main section before the park opened, and that's where this group of like, I don't know,
4
or 5 kids.
Yep.
And they were like, hey.
Yeah.
So that was really neat.
Yeah, it was really neat. So we did a little video with them and just said, like they love Partysaurus Rex and all that. But okay, so Cars Land. I just got to get right to it. So it doesn't really tie in 100% to the Partysaurus Rex adventure, but Cars Land, definitely stay tuned to our site because we're going to be doing a very detailed post of that area. I went around and took pictures of the tiniest little details of things that I don't necessarily know that everybody has seen. I'm sure people have seen it, but I don't know if it's been posted about. So I'm going to do a really in-depth look at that because I spent a ton of time in Cars Land. I was just so enamored. Being a collector of the die-cast cars and a lover of the movies, I was just like...
I had to leave TJ. He is not a... not leave him. He is not a thrill ride person, so I had to go leave him so we could take pictures so I could ride all the thrill rides. So
she did her Tower of Terror and things like that, but I just stood around there, and I can't... The theming is unreal. It is unlike anything you've ever seen, and it's just... It is so accurate, and it truly comes to life at night when those neon lights come on. I know people have said that, but... It's awesome.
It was beautiful.
I did not want to leave. It was so cool with the characters driving around. They had DJ and Red, and then they had Lightning McQueen and Mater. And
yeah, he was so enamored by it that we were only at California Adventure that day. We stayed another day, and so we could see Disneyland
and then go back to
California Adventure.
Right. So Cars Land.
Or Cars Land.
So all in all, tons of great reactions at Disney California Adventure. Disneyland was a very similar story. Kids running up and saying, oh my gosh, it's Partysaurus Rex, and pulling their parents over to talk. We had a lot of discussions about it. Lots of people took photos of Rex. It was great.
It was great.
So our experience at Disney was, what we would expect a Disney experience to be, and it was enhanced just because we were able to interact with so many more people because of the Partysaurus Rex.
Mm-hmm.
So then from there, we leave there, we drive up to Santa Barbara, just basically passing through. Then we head to San Francisco. After we get to San Francisco, we settle in for the night. Next morning, we go to Fenton's. Of course, we got to go to Fenton's. It was the inspiration for the ice cream at the end of Up, where they're outside seeing the cars going by, red one, blue one, all that kind of... And Doug says a gray one because dogs are colorblind. Love that. So... we talked with one of the waiters in there and said, hey, do the employees come in here? Do you know who they are? And we're totally trying to geek out on this guy.
Well, it's the only reason we asked is because he's like, hey, the Pixar guys come here all the time. They sit at that booth right over there. It's like this huge booth. He goes, I don't know who they are, but we all know that they're Pixar guys.
Right. So
and we're like, how do you not know who they are?
Right. So it was really cool to, just see that as the inspiration. And then, we ate some lunch there and had some ice cream, of course. And right after that, we headed right from there to Pixar. Now, this is my first time into Pixar. We drove in the main gates this time. Yeah. Really cool. I got my name badge where it says a stranger from the outside. I was all... enamored by it. Julie drove in so that way I could video the entire experience. So after we park, we start walking in. And just like Julie said, it's kind of weird how all of a sudden it's just like you park and you're in. Thought it was a longer walk to get there. It's nice that it wasn't. But as we start walking into the building, we're seeing all these people. We're seeing Ricky Nervo, who's a character designer, and we're seeing Everett Downing, who's a story artist there. And he did people may know him from the 365 Supers project that he did. It was crazy. So one of the first things that we do when we get in there, besides taking a whole bunch of pictures with Partysaurus Rex, and some of the employees, of course, are coming over to us going, oh my gosh, it's Partysaurus Rex.
I didn't know they made a toy.
Right. So, so we're telling them we're there to, hang out and talk with Mark Walsh and all this other stuff. So we go to the store, because it's my first time in the store, too.
And TJ went nuts.
I, of course,
You would have thought that 2 weeks prior when I was there, I bought the whole store. Well, apparently I didn't. Because he... could outshop any woman, apparently.
Hey, it's Pixar. So, I had a blast. It was fantastic. I got another one of the John Lasseter-inspired shirts. This time I got the Toy Story 3-inspired one. I can't even tell you all the things we got, but let's just say we got some fun things for our readers and listeners as well, so stay tuned.
Yes.
But when we're in the store, funny little side note, all of a sudden Julie gets out her cell phone, and she pulls open. I'm like, you're going to text somebody? I'm like, we're at the Pixar Studios. We're at Pixar Studios, and you're going to start texting somebody? I'm like, who are you texting?
He's being all loud. Well, mind you, an employee had walked into the store with us. So it is TJ and I and this employee that walked in. And I knew exactly who this employee was.
Yeah, well, I didn't even look because I was too like, oh my gosh, should I get this? Should I get that? Oh my God, I need it all. So
and he's standing right next to TJ. And the store's small, so I can't say,
hey, TJ, look up here. This is so-and-so.
So-and-so, because I didn't want this employee to, hear me say, oh my gosh.
Yeah, she was unsure if we should, disturb them or bug them.
Yeah.
So she texts, is that Bob Whitehill? And so I just start laughing, and I just look at her, and I nod my head yes. And so anyways, he goes to check out, and once he's done with his process, we say, hey, we said, are you Bob? And
which I knew he was.
But of course, what were we going to say? Yeah, so we start, and for people that don't know, he is the 3D stereoscopic supervisor. So he kind of oversees the 3D conversion of the films, and we had seen him on some of the extras, and when they did the little featurette for Finding Nemo 3D, that's where you may have seen him when they re-released that in the theaters. So he goes, yes, I am. And so you could tell that he probably doesn't get recognized as often as some other, animators and big people. So he was pretty excited. So that was really cool. So we talked to him for a couple minutes, nothing big.
Yeah.
But then he left. And a couple minutes later, all of a sudden he goes, hey guys. And he comes back and he's like, I want you to meet Alex Mandel, which we were like, what?
What?
Yeah. So he brings in somebody else to come visit us, and he goes, yeah, I just ran in there and somebody recognized me. And so Alex was like, oh my gosh, they sent me a car.
Yeah, he's like, I know TJ and Julie.
Yeah. So he comes in, and unfortunately they didn't have a ton of time to talk because they were going into a meeting. But he's like, definitely thanks for stopping by. We'll have to chat more if you're still around. After we're done.
After this meeting, he goes, I'll come see if you're out here.
Yeah. So it was really neat.
They were both so gracious. Like, that really geeked us out.
Yeah, it was really cool. And Alex Mandel, for people that may not know, does a ton of the music.
And he is tall.
Very tall. Yeah, he wrote Into the Open Air and Touch the Sky with Mark Andrews for Brave, and he's done a countless other little snippets, like for The Incredibles short, one of those, and he did My Friend the Rat. So he's done a bunch of music and does a whole bunch of other consulting things within Pixar as well. So it was really cool.
Oh, it was incredible.
Yeah. So the one other thing I had to talk about with our experience there is, well, two other things. One of them before we met with Mark as well, just the atrium, taking it in, seeing the cereal bar, seeing the scooters on the railing where it just says need one, take one, give one. It's like a take a penny, leave a penny kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's just scooters everywhere, and people just grab them and they go flying around. And it's a culture unlike anything you have ever seen or experienced, and we'll get into more of that, as we talk about our experience with Mark. But the atrium, from a photographer's standpoint and from a designer standpoint, is like a dream. I mean, the design of it, the lighting in there, it's just such a stunning building to be in. And I didn't get a chance to go over to Brooklyn at all, so I don't know. How did it compare to the look of the atrium?
It's the same kind of look. It's a little bit different, but it still has that clean, classic look.
Yeah.
They have a mailroom over there. They have a cereal bar over there.
They do in the Brooklyn building as well.
They have a little cafe over there. So it's but it's also, there's this huge fireplace in the middle of the atrium in the Brooklyn building that houses a secret lounge in it, which is kind of neat. So there's different elements that each building is unique and has its special qualities, I think, especially to the employees that work there.
Right.
They're both beautiful buildings.
Yeah.
But that atrium in the Steve Jobs building...
Oh, yeah, it's something else.
That really is beautiful.
So we took a ton of photos outside as well, of the lamp and all those kind of things, and we'll be doing a post with a lot more of those photos. I brought a whole bunch of my lenses so I could do some really creative stuff, so keep an eye out for those. But now here's the best part. We were able to meet up with Partysaurus Rex director Mark Walsh.
Yes.
So we were totally pumped. He was very busy, but he's like, you know what, you guys traveled out here, I have to meet with you. So he gave us a whirlwind tour. And on this tour, we saw some amazing things.
He is wonderful.
Yeah, how awesome.
I adore him.
Yeah.
He is such... He's a gentleman. He's nice. He's gracious. He's everything.
Yeah, very thoughtful of people and everything like that. So he takes us on this whisking whirlwind tour, and he's like, hey, I want to show you some of the animation department. So we go back there. And again, no pictures back here, so we just have to describe some of the things that we saw. We can't describe everything. Mental pictures again. But we see a lot of the offices. As soon as we get back there, I'm like, where am I? It feels like I'm in a DVD extra, because that's the only time that I have seen
these
offices, the crazy offices that are all designed, like the one that looks like the Up House, and then the one that's like his office is like a tiki room, and
which is incredible.
Yeah, it's a legit tiki room.
It's massive.
Yeah, masks from Disney World and all these other kind of crazy things.
Yeah.
And, there's another one that looks like it's a plane crash that's like fuselage. And these employees...
A la Indiana Jones.
Indiana
like
Jones.
Old school, 30s kind of plane crash.
Really neat. They had a fog machine going in there. They had forest sounds. So they had
incredible.
Yeah, unreal. So the authenticity of them, and then the employees, we found out they do all that work themselves to put their offices together, but Pixar just allows them to do whatever. We heard so many cool fables that Mark was telling us when we were walking around of things that were on the walls, and just
stories.
There was there was a tree that was like from 95 that was like Pete Docter's Halloween costume, and he's like, yeah, nobody even knows what this is, but Mark's been there for so long. He's like, this was Pete Docter's Halloween costume, and
we all know how tall Pete Docter is. This tree was huge.
Yeah, so he wore this thing. It was made out of like that spray foam insulation and then painted it.
Yeah.
So it was really cool.
It was funny.
Yeah. So we saw tons and tons of these cool things like this. So many that I wish we could really talk about. But at an hour and 45 minutes into this podcast, this is the part that gets interesting. So we're going to talk about a couple more. But one that I couldn't believe is he walked us by. We didn't necessarily see it, but we walked by where the audio is recorded when they have voice talent come in. And it's the wall of signatures. So it's, the people that have done the voices for so many of these Pixar iconic characters have signed this wall and dated it and which character they did. It was so neat to see that.
Really neat.
Yeah. And then, he also told us one other really interesting thing that he said a lot of times, not all of the audio is recorded there. A lot of times because the talent, it's more cost effective to send a couple Pixar employees to the local recording studio where that employee or where that talent is. So Tom Hanks is just, an example. It's cheaper to fly to Tom Hanks than to have Tom Hanks come to Pixar Studios. But he did tell us that, Larry the Cable Guy has done all of Mater's work there, for all the shorts, the movies, and everything like that. It was really, really awesome. So anyways, we could talk about that forever, but we left feeling just totally elated, and it was like almost like I said, like a DVD extra, so it was like an out-of-body kind of experience. All I have to say is that I really, truly hope that we get to go back again, because I cannot wait, if that happens again, to continue to tell our readers and listeners more about it, but just to experience more of it, because it is so unlike everything else. In one of the central animation areas, there's like a little like bar area where some employees can hang out, and there's like a band stand. There's a set of drums and a guitar and a bass and microphone in case they just want to have a jam session out of nowhere. This is stuff that in our daily lives, and probably most of the people listening to this, you don't experience offices like this. It is the coolest thing that you've experienced.
Everything that you could dream of. It's that DVD extra amplified because we physically saw it.
Yeah, and like I said, I really, truly hope that we can go back again and experience some more of it. Now, I should also say, with all this fun that we're talking about, it's not like the employees were all goofing around. They work hard.
They were working.
They were all working, but there is those moments where the play happens, and then they come back to doing their work. I don't want to make it sound like anybody there was slacking.
No one.
Because they were not. They were
in their offices working.
Yeah, and Mark took us around, introduced us to a few people, but he didn't...
They were so kind. They,
stopped what they were doing.
Yeah, which was so nice. This was their work day, and they stopped to meet us, greet us, tell us a little, they explained what, who they were, and it was just really nice.
Yep. So from the building itself to the grounds to the quirky elements to the knowledge that sits in there, it was like going backstage and meeting your favorite band and finding out that some of them kind of knew you already too, which was crazy.
That blew our minds the most, I think.
Right.
And it was when we were in the Pixar Studio Store and we met Bob Whitehill. He's like, "Oh, Party Source Rex."
Yeah, he's like, "I've been on your site."
Yeah, we're like, "What?"
Yeah. So it was crazy. So anyways, that about wraps it up for this episode. Episode 11 of the Pixar Post Podcast. Thanks for hanging in with us while we did a longer podcast. We hope that you really enjoyed it. Please let us know what you thought. And, we're excited to bring you 2 more episodes that are themed after this event. You'll hear tons of more interviews and roundtable discussions. But signing off for this time, it's TJ.
And Julie.
And be sure to tune into Pixar Post all week for the latest Pixar news.